You know what the last few days has really taught me, everybody? That I am not a smart wrestling fan. Now, the definition of a smart wrestling fan changes from who you hear it from. I mean, to many people, a smart wrestling fan is a person who kind of knows what's going on in the business. A person who understands everything about the WWE and the wrestling business and puts their opinions out there. And that's pretty much how it goes. But the problem with all of that is that a lot of people who call themselves smart fans, or call themselves smarks, or give themselves a confidence boost in this field, is that they look at the wrestling news sites, the dirt sheets, the online spectrum of opinion. Now, the one thing I have a problem with is the idea that, well, that everything that comes out of my mouth isn't really my own opinion. And I had this idea when I was looking at my lecture today in digital media on the idea of deconstructing. And the idea behind it kind of reminded me of a quote that I think the Schleg Daddy pointed out. Was it Dan Parker? And I can't exactly remember who said this, but I know they said it, saying, "Is what comes out of your mouth when making an opinion original from you, or have you just taken someone else's opinion and put it in your mouth because you don't really know how to explain it?" And the idea of deconstruction highlights around the idea that you have something, a signifier, something there, which then you have to deconstruct, take apart, and find meaning of it all over the place. But of course that meaning isn't concrete. That meaning isn't concrete because someone else could find another meaning for it. You then have to track down that meaning and then find everything in it to find a new meaning that can be consistent of your own. And of course, that meaning will continuously change until the end of time, because anyone has a different perception on what something is, what something means. And it made me today understand that most of what I say and most of what I think stems from what other people are saying. And I love ripping WWE apart and analysing the storylines, which I can do on my own volition, with no help from outside areas from these news sites giving me some material to work with. But the fact of the matter is, when they say, oh, this is going to happen at this match, and this is going to be happening at this pay-per-view, and this is how the feud's going to be going, and it takes away the idea that I'm really thinking for myself, and that's really ate away at me the last couple of days. Now, I respect the living hell out of the guys who are making a living out of this, because they try their hardest to be as good as they can as pro wrestling journalists. But the problem I have with them is the fans crap on them even when they get something right, because they say, oh, they got this right because WWE have said this, and therefore it's not what we want. WWE are just doing what they want, and these guys are just sheep reporting for them. I mean, guys like Dave Meltzer, I mean, Hijack Raw was a failure, but it was even more annoying seeing people crap on Dave Meltzer, who I would respect because he watches pretty much everything. Him and his team watch all kinds of wrestling from all over the world, analyse it, and post opinions as well as the news they hear from their sources. I mean, a lot of the stuff the wrestling news sites get comes from Meltzer, but the fact of the matter is, like most journalism, until it's proven fact by what you see, you can't take it for granted. And WWE, they know these people are out there. Guys like Justin LaBar and Wade Canton Wade Keller, of Pro Wrestling Torch, and loads of others who have got the experience, but they obviously can't predict everything. They can't use the right sources to get everything there, and it's very challenging for them, like any aspect of journalism would be. And I'm always intrigued by taking my opinions on pro wrestling to the next level and trying to forge, maybe in the future, if I take up something, forge a career in it, maybe. I've always wanted to, because it's intrigued me how I can just take the pro wrestling business and decode the living crap out of it. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm using them and their opinions as a basis for what I'm doing, it's not really me. It's not me. My predictions videos are 3/4 me, and 1/4 what I've already been told by these dirt sheets, by the news sites, and that doesn't really feel authentic. And you know, Raw this past week, Hijack Raw may have been a complete failure, but that's mostly because I discounted everything. I discounted what the dirt sheets were saying, I discounted what a lot of the fans were saying, and even though I kind of fell a little bit into the trap that maybe Meltzer had gotten hold of something? I had a feeling when the show began. I said to Rico, when I was talking to him on Skype, saying, is it going to happen, yes or no? And I said it wasn't. There was a tiny bit of hope, but I knew in my heart it was not going to happen, and I was proven right. And honestly, all of this has just made me think to myself, I need a more independent way of thinking. And a lot of the fans out there need to as well. I mean, sure, we all like Aaron Rift and his opinions, but he's taking the opinions from other sites, reposting those news on his site, and therefore gets a lot of what he can from that. And sure, his countdowns and his Q&As highlight his opinion very well. For me, however, I don't really feel like I have a chance to really showcase what my opinions are properly, because all it is recycled from other people. And my blog proved in some occasions when I can use my own opinion that I'm really loving when I do that, because it makes me feel like it's mine. Like the blog I made on Shawn Michaels, highlighting to the people who were saying, oh, Shawn should come back and wrestle Daniel Bryan, and oh, he shouldn't come back. And I was highlighting, well, it's not your choice on whether he shouldn't come back or not. Shawn Michaels makes the damn decision. No one else was really saying that, and I just put it out there, and I enjoyed the living crap out of it. When I was picking apart the notion of Darren Young's revealed homosexuality and the impact on his character that it may have, I felt even more impressed with myself, because not only was I able to think about it independently without any outside pressure on my head from other news sites, I was able to think to myself and go, you know what, if I was in a position like this, if I was a creative writer thinking about the implications of a person's personal life, thinking, what could we do to use it? Now, I of course know WWE haven't used it. They don't want to fall into the trap of negative publicity, and I can understand it. But when I looked at it at the time and thought, okay, I can see people were trying to see what future could this hold for Darren Young. I could give it a shot. And I felt so proud of myself. And honestly, that's the thing. When I'm focusing on just my ideas, my own predictions, I know personally I can decode the storylines, the narratives, out of most of what happens on WWE's pay-per-view cards in the build-up to these things, because I look at what I see, take it apart, look at what potential endings could come from it, and then see exactly what could happen later down the road for other things that come down there. That's how I look at things, and I bloody love it. But having the outside influence of, oh, these people have been saying this happens, makes me think, you know what, I'm just feeding their opinion through. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to disown the dirt sheets. I'm going to disown the news sites. Because even though I respect what they do, I don't want them making my mind into something it isn't, which is not mine. So, that's a good reason enough. And what's also annoying for me is that, yeah, sure, I'm still going to be flooded with these people's opinions, the IWC's opinions on Facebook, because the news sites, I technically still follow their pages. I'm going to have to learn to not give a crap about what someone else thinks, and think about it from my own perspective. Because I don't like it that I'm having to continuously feed off the opinions of smart fans who honestly in many occasions don't know better, and I'm then having to feed off wrestling journalists who I respect, and that respect then translates to me having to want to read their opinion to make my mind better. But obviously that doesn't work, because it just doesn't feel right to me. And honestly, that's the point. I want to be able to say something and people go, do you know what Cream Crazy said about it? Well, he's right. When spouting my opinion about something, to hear someone else say I influenced their idea may be something quite impressive for me. I don't know if that'll be the case, but I want to be in a position where I don't feel constricted by what's already been said. You know, I want to think independently, and I've always said that. It's one of the reasons why I am straight edge as well, is I don't want alcohol and drugs and everything else to take over my brain and say to me, you're doing this. Even though we know you don't want to, we're going to make you do it. And that's the important thing. Dirt sheets and internet news sites are just making a fan's perception of the product into something that really isn't theirs. And I mean, sure, some fans who hate John Cena can come up with their own ideas on why they hate John Cena, but that's mostly because they look at other people's perceptions on how to view John Cena, and they then take those perceptions and fuel them into their own argument, because they believe that the argument stands. And I know that in the subject and the field of pro wrestling, it's hard to find theoretical balance, like most other fields, to stand up for opinions on what things are, unless it's a ridiculously well-regarded book by a person like Meltzer or a wrestler themselves out there. Then you can't really take a look at it and say, I want to use that opinion, because a lot of the time those opinions aren't really, factual. They're all just that, opinions. The same can be said for any theoretical person out there, like a Noam Chomsky of all things, or even Brecht, who in the 70s made a huge thing, a huge study on pro wrestling, which I stress to God, if you have not read it, give it a shot, because it is kind of awesome to look at the idea behind everything. It's impressive. But again, one thing about it is I'm taking other people's ideas in, and it just makes me feel that I'm not me. And that, I mean, some people may say me wanting other people to look at my opinions and say, oh, this guy's got a good opinion, when you're trying to not do the same, is a bit hypocritical. But the fact of the matter is, I just want to make myself feel happier within. If someone else does exactly what I've just said, looks at my opinion and goes, okay, Cream Crazy, Freddy's opinion works out. That's all well and good. I'm fine with that. But then again, this is a personal thing. That's what, if someone takes my opinions and ideas and says that's alright, then that's their perception. But my perception of my own thought is what this is about here. And even though a lot of the time what comes out of my mouth regarding the WWE is mine, the influence of every other site is just too hard to ignore. Sometimes you just gotta think, why am I following these things? And it was 13 hours ago I put up that tweet highlighting why I didn't really want to follow them anymore. Why am I doing it? If the opinions that they give out are causing me to become a bit bitter, that fans are complaining about things that get reported, why am I even looking at them in the first place? It's annoying for me. And also with nearly a month to go until WrestleMania, I want to report WrestleMania from New Orleans in the clearest eye possible. I want to report with it being just me. It is legit, for the most part, just me in New Orleans reporting my ideas, my opinions for 5 straight days in 5 straight videos. And that's the kind of thing I want to work towards. I want to work towards a better content for you guys by making myself feel better about what I'm thinking about in pro wrestling. And if I have to discount some credible sources for these things, then that's fine. Because I want to feel better that if I can think it up myself, then that'll hopefully show to the rest of the SMARC and the IWC and the YWC community that they can do the same. I don't want to have to take... I understand taking in some people's opinions on a YouTube might be reasonable because they are not in the position that guys like Meltzer or Keller are, where they effectively can be seen as gospel for this kind of stuff. They're just fans like you and me. It's easy to understand where the opinion comes from, but using a link to a website as the basis for opinion, it's like taking a newspaper article and feeding it through that. If you can't hear about something, immediately come up with an opinion on it, almost instantaneously based on your own thought, something is wrong. If you need to read through detailed articles, long articles sometimes, that highlight an entire basis of your own argument, then you're not really doing it right. You're not doing critical thinking right. You're not doing analysis right. The analysis of pro wrestling for me is looking at it from what you see. If you can't look at what you see and decode it right there, you're not very good at it. And there are guys on YouTube who are fucking good at it. They're, in fact, actually, to be honest with you, they're fucking glorious at it. And I feel that I want to join that, as I've done in the past. Give the analysis that is quite bloody in depth, but I don't want people influencing my own ideas. And I think some people may say it's a bit of a hypocritical situation when you still watch these people on YouTube, you still are on the news sites on Twitter and Facebook, even if you're not going to watch them on the net. That's just it. These news sites are causing me internal struggle, and since Monday and the lecture I had today, it just makes me think, am I really thinking for myself? And hopefully this video will be the beginning of hopefully a more clear and more understandable notion of interpretation of the product from my end, at least. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping that I can gain a fresh understanding by just looking, picking apart, and going for it. The same applies for the film industry and the music industry, and honestly every single other thing I look at sport-wise. I don't need to listen to someone else to formulate an opinion. I just need to listen to me. Listen to my knowledge. Pick apart everything I see because I'm the one looking at it. I'm not saying my opinion rises above all, but in yourself, the opinion of yourself matters more. And if you're not making that opinion yours from the get-go, then there's no real point. So from now, I don't know when, the wrestling news sites, in a web sense, are off. I'm not going to click on them. Even on Facebook and Twitter, I am not going to click on them either. And that's just how it's going to be for the moment. I just don't want to be put in a school of thinking by something else. And unfortunately, that's just how it's going to be. Guys, I've been Cream Crazy. You've been people listening. Actually, you know what? Fuck it. I've been Freddie Thomas. And you've been people listening. This has been a wrestling rant. And you know what? This is just how things are. And I'll see you guys next time.